The wind rose along the steep ridges of the Wyoming mountains like a warning that crept into a man's bones long before he understood it. By nightfall, the storm had gathered into a white wall that erased the world beyond Cole Harrison's cabin. Snow slammed against the wooden siding again and again, soft at first, then sharper, like fingertips turning into fists. Inside, the fire snapped in the stone fireplace, its warm glow reaching across the room, but doing little to soften the heaviness inside Cole's chest. Winter could freeze the land, but grief had frozen him long before. He moved through the cabin in slow, practiced motions. He checked the hearth, nudged more firewood into place, then tightened each window latch one by one. It was the same routine he had leaned on during many long winters. Once it comforted him. Now it only reminded him of what was missing, the rocking chair that had not moved in 4 years. The coat hanging by the door that belonged to no one anymore. The wedding picture tucked face down in a drawer, because he could not stand to see the smile he lost. Outside, the storm grew stronger. Snow scraped across the shutters in long, angry breaths. Cole paused at the window, squinting at the swirling white that swallowed the pine trees on the ridge. The night was the kind no animal should wander in, and no traveler should be caught in. He turned away from the glass and reached for the kettle, meaning to heat water, but before he could strike a match, a faint sound slipped through the storm. He froze. It was small and brittle, almost hidden beneath the roar of the wind. A soft scrape, a trembling whinny. At first he thought it was loose metal swinging on the wall, or a tree branch broken free. But the sound came again, clearer this time. A dragging step, a stumble. A pained exhale that did not sound human at all. Every hair on Cole's arms rose. He set the kettle down slowly and stepped toward the door. Each footfall creaked against the old wooden floor. No one came to this cabin. Not hikers, not rangers, not neighbors. And nothing with 4 legs ever came this close during a storm like this, not unless it was lost, terrified, or dying. The sound drifted through the wind again, this time so close it seemed just beyond the door. Cole pressed his ear against the wood. The storm raged on the other side, but beneath it he heard something soft and desperate, hooves shifting on frozen ground. A memory stabbed through him without warning. His wife's mare stumbling on icy earth years ago, his helpless hands, the silence afterward. His throat tightened, and he almost stepped back. He was not ready to face anything tied to that night, but the sound came again, fragile, pleading, impossible to ignore. He unlatched the door just an inch. A blast of frigid air burst inside, whipping sparks from the fireplace across the floor. Snow rolled through the crack, forcing him to squint into the storm. At first he saw nothing but white, then a shadow swayed near the porch steps. Cole pushed the door open wider. A horse stood there, or what was left of one. Her ribs showed beneath a coat matted with ice. Her legs shook so hard it looked like they might give out at any moment. Her chestnut head lifted slowly, and in her exhausted eyes Cole saw something raw and wordless. A plea. At her side, leaning weakly against her front leg, stood a small foal, barely holding itself upright. Another foal lay in the snow behind them, almost still, unmoving except for a faint trembling of its ear when the wind peeled the snow away. Cole stared, breath locked in his chest. The storm wailed around him, pushing icy needles against his face, urging him to shut the door and pretend he had not seen what stood before him. It would be easier. Safer. And hiding from pain was something he had spent 4 years perfecting. But the mare took a step toward him. Her knees buckled, and she caught herself with a soft, broken gasp. The standing foal pressed tighter against her side, letting out a small, frightened bleat that tore straight through Cole's defenses. He gripped the doorframe to steady himself. "Lord," he whispered, though he did not know if it was a prayer or surrender. The wind howled. Snow spun around the 3 shapes on his porch. The mare's breath came in ragged clouds. The smaller foal remained motionless in the snow, breath so faint Cole could barely see them. He knew then the storm had not brought them here by chance. It had brought them to him. Cole stood there, the door wide open, cold air biting at his skin, his hand trembling against the frame. The choice deepened inside him with every second he hesitated. The mare's eyes met his again. Not wild, not threatening, just pleading, trusting him with the last of her strength. He stepped forward. Warm light spilled out of the cabin and touched the mare's battered coat. The chapter closed with Cole still standing in the open doorway, snow swirling past him, caught in the breath before a choice that would change his life forever. The storm eased into a restless murmur that scraped along the cabin walls, but the tension inside the small room only grew heavier. Cole stood at the window, peering through the frost-covered glass as the fire crackled behind him. He wasn't looking at the trees or the endless white. He was listening for the sound he feared more than the storm itself. A faint scrape, a low growl, a shadow moving with purpose instead of wind. The mare sensed it before he did. She lifted her head sharply, ears twitching toward the door. Her breath came in short bursts now, not from pain, but from alarm. The stronger foal pressed close to her flank, trembling. The smaller one, wrapped in blankets by the fire, shifted with a weak, uneasy sound. Cole felt the air inside the cabin tighten. He whipped his sleeve against the window pane, clearing a small patch. At first he saw only drifting snow, then a shape, low, dark, moving through the pines, then another, and a third. Eyes glowed pale gold when the wind angled just right. Wolves, a whole pack, circling in a slow, coordinated arc, driven by hunger sharpened by winter and the scent of weakened prey. Cole's breath hitched. He'd read about wolves moving in storms, using the weather as cover to hunt animals that had wandered too far from shelter. But reading about danger and standing in the middle of it were two very different things. The mare shifted her weight, positioning herself protectively between the door and her foals. Even injured, she fought to stand tall, her muscles twitching from exhaustion and instinct colliding inside her. "I've got you," Cole whispered, though he wasn't sure if the words comforted them or himself. A sudden thud shook the door. The mare jerked. The foals flinched. Cole spun around and planted both hands against the wood. Something outside had hit it hard. Not enough to break through, but enough to test it. He grabbed the long iron poker from beside the stove and wedged it under the latch. The door creaked against the pressure as the wind shoved more snow against it. The wolves padded in tight circles, their bodies slipping in and out of view between swirls of white. Cole crouched beside the smaller foal again, brushing his hand along its neck. Its breathing rattled but steadied slightly when he spoke. The mare leaned toward him, bumping his arm with her muzzle. A silent plea, a flicker of trust. He fed the fire higher, flames curling bright across the cabin walls. Heat spread through the room, warming the animals' bodies and buying them a little more strength. But the wolves did not leave. Their footfalls crunched across the snow in slow, patient steps. They paced, paused, and paced again. They were waiting for weakness. Cole stood in the center of the room, the fire at his back and the door at his front, every sense alert. The mare watched him with wide, dark eyes filled with determination and fear. The stronger foal circled her legs nervously, bleating soft sounds that pulled at Cole's chest. The smaller foal twitched again under the blankets, fighting to stay alive. The door rattled on its hinges as something heavy brushed against it. Cole braced it with his shoulder. "Not today," he muttered. "Not while they're under my roof." Minutes stretched like hours. The wolves tested the door once more, then fell quiet. Cole listened, heart hammering. Footsteps shuffled back and forth, fading, rising, fading again. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the pressure eased. A last growl slipped through the cracks, frustrated and sharp. Then silence, real silence. Not the silence of danger hiding, but the silence that came when danger finally decided to move on. Cole waited, counted to 30, then to 60. Only the low hum of the dying storm and the pop of firewood answered him. He let out a long breath, shoulders sagging. The mare lowered her head, exhaustion flooding her body. The stronger foal pressed close to her side. The smaller foal let out a weak sigh, warm air stirring beneath the blanket. Cole knelt beside them, rubbing a hand gently along the mare's neck. "You're safe," he whispered. "You're safe now." Her eyelids fluttered, but she did not pull away. Instead, she leaned into his hand with a softness that stunned him. Wild animals didn't trust lightly, but tonight something had shifted between them, something fragile and real. He checked the smaller foal again, relieved to find its breathing steadier than before. The warmth of the fire had begun to seep into its bones. Hope flickered inside Cole, warm and fragile as the flame itself. The wind outside softened. The storm was losing its strength. Inside the cabin, life was clinging on. Cole dragged a chair close to the fire and sat, elbows resting on his knees, eyes fixed on the door, guarding the 3 lives that had stumbled into his home and changed everything. "You're fighters," he whispered into the quiet room. "All of you." The mare lifted her head ever so slightly. The foals settled against her sides, and in the glow of the fire, Cole realized something he hadn't felt in years: purpose. As the wolves' footprints faded into the snow outside, a new beginning took its place inside the cabin walls. The storm faded into memory as winter loosened its grip on the Wyoming mountains. Snow melted into soft drifts, grass began to show through the earth, and sunlight stretched longer across the valleys. 3 long months had passed since the night Cole opened his cabin door and saved the battered mare and her fragile foals. Life changed after that night. Willow, the weaker foal, grew stronger each day. Birch, the sturdier one, learned to race in wobbly circles around the clearing, while Willow watched with slow-growing confidence. The mare, whose strength had once clung to life by a thread, now stepped with a grace that made Cole stop and admire her whenever she lifted her head toward the open sky. And when the day came that Willow could stand without shaking, the mare gathered her children and walked toward the hills. Cole followed them until the trees swallowed their shapes. They were wild, and the world belonged to them again. But when they were gone, the silence in Cole's cabin felt different. Not empty, not painful, just quiet, like something had healed in the night without asking his permission. He had expected sadness, but instead felt a strange peace curling through his chest. A piece of him had gone with them, but a piece of them had stayed with him too. Still, he thought of them often. He imagined Willow growing taller, Birch growing braver, and the mare leading them across open land with the confidence she had regained. Every evening, Cole stepped onto his porch just to look toward the ridge, hoping to catch a glimpse of 3 silhouettes against the sky. But they never came, not for 3 whole months. Then, on a warm summer afternoon, everything changed. Cole was driving his old pickup along the narrow mountain road toward the research station where he worked part-time, delivering supplies and checking weather monitors. Sunlight dipped low, turning the pine needles gold. The road curved sharply around a bend, and Cole slammed both feet on the brake. A horse stood in the middle of the road, a chestnut mare, strong, alive, and shining beneath the sun like copper warmed by fire. Ember. Cole's breath cracked inside him. She stepped forward once, planting herself firmly in front of the truck. Not afraid, not confused, certain. Her eyes locked on him with a focus that sent a shiver racing through his spine. "What are you doing here?" he whispered. Before he could move, Ember let out a sharp, urgent whinny, short, loud, and meant to warn. Something was wrong. 2 shapes moved from the trees: Birch, taller now, powerful and bright-eyed, and Willow, no longer weak, no longer fragile, but standing proud at her mother's side. Cole's heart twisted at the sight of them. They were alive, they were strong, they remembered him. But Ember wasn't here for a reunion. She turned sharply toward the narrow wooden bridge ahead. Her ears pinned flat, her muscles tightened, her stare became fierce. Cole followed her gaze. A deep rumble echoed up the mountain pass. The ground shook beneath him. A freight train. Its horn blared again and again, a frantic warning as it roared up the incline. It was moving too fast, far too fast. The brakes screamed against the rails, metal shrieking through the valley. Cole leaned out the window and saw it. The train was seconds away from hitting the wooden bridge he was about to cross, a bridge that would explode under the weight. A bridge he would have been on if Ember had not stopped him. The truth hit him all at once. She was saving him. He kicked open the truck door and jumped out, boots skidding on the gravel. Ember stood her ground, staring him down as if daring him to doubt her. Birch and Willow flanked her sides like guards protecting their own. Then the world erupted. The freight train slammed into the wooden bridge with a violent roar. Beams split apart like matchsticks. Metal twisted. Dust shot skyward in a choking cloud. The rails shuddered beneath the impact as the bridge collapsed into a storm of splinters and fire and noise. Cole stumbled backward, shielding his face from the flying debris. When the sound finally died into a trembling hiss, he lowered his arm and looked at Ember. She was calm again, steady, watching him, alive because of him. And now he was alive because of her. Cole stepped toward her, throat tight. Ember dipped her head until her muzzle brushed softly against his sleeve. The touch was gentle, full of meaning, full of memory. "You saved my life," Cole whispered, "just like I saved yours." Birch snorted proudly. Willow lifted her head with a quiet strength Cole had never seen in her before. The three horses stood with him a moment longer, wrapped in sunlight and dust and a bond no one could ever explain. Then Ember turned toward the hills. She looked back once, one long final look that held gratitude, trust, and something like goodbye. Cole raised his hand in return. Then she was gone. Willow and Birch bounded after her, disappearing into the trees with wild freedom in their steps. Cole stood on the ruined road, dust curling around him, breath shaking with everything he had just witnessed. He turned toward the shattered bridge, then toward the wide wilderness, where 3 lives disappeared into the horizon. "Thank you," he whispered. The wind carried his words into the mountains, soft as a promise. Cole walked back to his truck with a heart that felt changed in a way he could not name. The world had given him a second chance, and it had delivered that chance through 3 horses who once needed him to survive, only to return and save him in return. Some stories change a man forever. This one had saved him twice.